The Denver Broncos have decided the Russell Wilson era might just be over. Ian Rappaport reporting on Wednesday that Denver is strongly considering sitting Russell Wilson for the final 2 games of the season to avoid any risk of injury in relationship to future money Russell Wilson is owed. The details of it, superfluous to the main point. Russell Wilson might be done in Denver. Cody Roark from Locked On Broncos joins me now from outside the practice facility there in Denver. And Cody, just what was your reaction when you first saw this report?
Well, Peter, to be honest with you, I was a little shocked to see this news coming out here today. I alluded to it in my Christmas Day article over at milehighsports.com that this could be something that pops up here for the Broncos and puts Jarrett Stidham in a very similar situation because of the fact that, hey, when you look at Russ's contract, he's going to be getting $39 guaranteed million next year. This is part of his new extension. It kicks in officially next year. He's still on the last couple of years of his deal with the Seahawks right now here in Denver. He also got a bunch of money up front from the Broncos when they decided to extend him last season. A little surprising here, considering the fact that, hey, he hasn't really been the reason they've lost games this season. They've had some offensive struggles, some consistency issues, though, Peter, consistently throughout the last couple of weeks. They've turned the ball over a little bit more. And it hasn't really been Russell Wilson outside of, obviously, a fumble that he had a couple of weeks ago against the Lions. So a little surprising here. But at the same time, Denver has to be smart because, Peter, if he were to get injured in any of these 2 remaining games, it would automatically accelerate his $37 million guarantee that would kick in on the 5th day of the new league year. So for Denver, this was a business decision. And, Sean Payton said it as well. Some of the reports have come out that this is looking to be for a little bit of an offensive spark because Denver's offense has struggled.
Yeah, it doubles as a stealth tank move, right? Like you get to say, hey, we've made a business decision. We're going to save this money. But the Denver Broncos, if they win their last 2 games, they're still, by some of the models, about a 20% chance to make the playoffs. Who knows what happens, right? The NFL, we've seen strange things happen. But at the same time, the Broncos have had a dearth of draft capital precisely because they went and got Russell Wilson. So now you've got a new coach who seems to be in charge. He's flexing his muscles and basically seems to be saying, look, we're done this year. We're pushing towards next season. And now they get the benefit of also saving the money and maybe getting that draft pick a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, they still have their 1st-round pick. They don't have a 2nd-round pick in this year's draft, but with Sean Payton and where they're at, one of the things I think they could be looking at doing here is also looking at something else. Like, for example, I think another thing we have to talk about here is this could also be a leverage standpoint between both sides. The Broncos, for example, could be looking at a situation where they ask Russell Wilson to potentially restructure his deal. That's certainly a possibility here for Denver. But, I mean, There is a real legitimate chance here that they move on. And this was the risk, I think, that was associated here for Denver, signing him to an extension before he played a single down with the Broncos. And that was something that was pushed by the ownership group, not necessarily general manager George Payton. But this doesn't mean that Russell Wilson's time in Denver is officially over, though it could be leaning that way. There could be a little bit of leverage game here for both sides. And I think that is something, maybe an underrated dynamic of this whole entire situation that we have to talk about.
Yeah, and we haven't heard from Russell Wilson yet as we sit here today. And so, there could be some negotiation, some wiggle room on moving forward because, as you said, and we've talked about this over the course of the season, and Sarah, your co-host, has been on here talking about the improvements Russell Wilson has made under Sean Payton. I don't think we can just assume that this is unsalvageable, right?
Correct. Yeah, 100%. And I think so much is going to be is the relationship between Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. Is it sustainable? And I think that's something we absolutely have to factor in here. Sean Payton, he's a little grouchy. I mean, we've all known this, though. He's always kind of been a grouchy guy, and there's no guarantee that Sean Payton wants to run it back necessarily here with Russ. And I think that's something you kind of get it. Based on you hear his press conferences, he's talked about it a little bit about how the offense hasn't been better. He even mentioned to us in our conference call yesterday with him. He talked about how the offense is average or below average in a lot of the major categories. There's times where there is a clean pocket and they have to stand in it. There's times where the pocket's messy. A lot of people are blaming Russell Wilson solely, but even Sean Payton has his fair share of blame on Denver's offensive struggles as well. So this could be a very, very interesting offseason for the Broncos, who, once again, we've seen that doomed quarterback carousel graphic. Peter, I'm scared and hesitant to ask the question, do we see that return next season here for Denver if they move on from Russ? It's going to be nuts, my friend.
Stay up to date all year on the Denver Broncos by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On Broncos on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube.